Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. As Muslim youth, we need to understand both Islam and the modern world in order to provide the necessary responses to the challenges facing Muslim youth today. On the one hand, we have Islam. How do we understand the universality of Islam? It's not merely that Islam is universal, but how does it actually apply universally? This means we need to look at the nature of Islam, its various parts, and how these parts connect within our individual and societal lives. And on the other hand, how has the modern world affected us? It's not simply that the modern world has affected us, but how? And these are essential questions, not only how it's affected us as Muslims, but first and foremost as human beings, because we are first and foremost human beings. I mean, Bani Adam, from the offspring of Adam, the first human created to know Allah. But especially as Muslims, as we seek to revive Islam as a living faith that transcends the physical, but that goes to the root of who we are, our souls, because Islam is a way of being, so that we can understand the true nature of the beauty of how Islam provides us this way of life and this way of being within our lives. Last week we spoke about understanding in and of itself, which is really the precedent of how do we actually face these challenges, these intellectual and social challenges. And that's what we provided last week, a spectrum of these modern challenges, issues such as urbanization, this amassing of information without the real tools of understanding knowledge, social issues, a distrust in the religious authority and leadership. Why are we divided by labels of Salafi and Sufi, of Shia and Sunni? These are real issues, and this is what this show is about. These are real issues, and you really appreciate guidance once you come to university, because you see all of these ideologies culminating in a university, which is really a universe. In Arabic it's called a Jami'ah, where everything is gathered. And we're not preaching, these are the experiences that we have. So as I've said, on the one hand is understanding Islam, and on the other is understanding the modern world. Now, what is Islam? How do we understand Islam? With all that's been said on the media about Islam, Muslims have been reduced to followers of a violent religion. If you look at the Muslim world, the Middle East, from a non-Muslim perspective, and they see the dysfunctionality in Muslim societies, they assume the cause is Islam. Whereas from the Muslim perspective, looking at the Muslim world and understanding our religion and our Deen, we understand that it's the abandonment of Islam. It's the fact that these leaders are no longer practicing Islam. And there's a saying, al-hukmu ala shay far'un an tasawwurihi, that before we can judge a thing, we have to understand it holistically, on both sides of the spectrum, with regards to Islam and the modern world. And one of the reasons why we see the emotional outbursts of some Muslims towards the modern world is because many Muslims are ignorant of the holistical nature of our Deen itself. And this transcends merely the intellectual and political realm, but on an individual level as well. And today our topic is on fiqh. Fiqh, jurisprudence, is something that is a part of our life. And there's a famous hadith that comes to mind, the hadith Jibreel, in which the Prophet ﷺ was sitting with Sahaba, and this is narrated by Sayyidina Umar radiallahu an. And Jibreel alayhi salam comes as a man, clean, with white robes and jet black hair, and he comes to the Prophet ﷺ with adab, but he comes straight to the Prophet ﷺ and he asks, what is Islam, Ya Muhammad? And the Prophet ﷺ says that Islam is the 5 pillars that we know, to testify, to pray salah, to pay zakat, to fast in the month of Ramadan, and to go on Hajj. The next question is, what is Iman? And these are the 6 articles of faith that we believe in. To believe in Allah, to believe in His angels, in the books, in the messengers, in the Yawm al-Qiyamah, and that good and evil is apportioned by Allah. And the third part is ihsan, to worship Allah as though you see Him. The fourth part are the signs of the end of time. So these are the 4 components with which we understand our Deen and the modern world. This is the lens which we look through. Traditionally, the scholars have said that al-Islam is what is known as fiqh, the outward. Like they say, the mind, body and soul. The body is the fiqh. Al-Iman is the mind, is understanding what we believe, our belief system. And Ihsan is really the spirit, to make something beautiful, to how do we actually worship Allah with excellence. And the fourth component is understanding the modern world. Today's guest is a very dear teacher of mine, Dr. Yaseen Kippie, who is really an acclaimed scholar with regards to an understanding fiqh. He has written the book Original Islam, Malik and the Madhab of Medina, as well as Original Islamic Law and other such works. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Yaseen.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
With the overwhelming pressures that we see in the modern world facing Muslims, especially the youth, we've seen a number of responses with regards to fiqh. Firstly, we have the response of the modern reformers, so much so that if the Quranic ayah or the hadith doesn't suit modern science and it seemingly contradicts it, we disregard that Quranic ayah or hadith. From a traditional perspective, that is non-violent extremism, and really it's non-violent extremism. But what we do need is not a reformation. We need a renewal, a revival of those classical teachings based on 1,400 years. The third response, which I want to deal with, is of a fundamentalist nature, which occasionally, manifests in violent extremism. We are talking about madhahib, right? These are the schools of thought that has developed in order to serve us the purpose of how do we actually worship Allah. And so that is my first question to you. What is a madhab? And how do you respond to these challenges and these voices who are against these madhahib?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me on this program. These are topics that I'm always interested to talk about, and I'm glad to think that there are other people who are watching who will be interested to find out about it and, in a sense, sharing the conversation. If we take it to a really simple linguistic start point, a madhab is a place of going, or possibly you could say a time word. It is how you go, the going on a path. So then you say to yourself, who's your guide? Whenever you want to go somewhere, if you don't know the route, you quite naturally seek a guide. If you're in the desert, you want a guide, or wherever you are. And we've always had that, even as human beings. When we come into the world, we have our parents, we have our friends later on, and so on. So there's always somebody else that you can turn to and get help from. Yeah. And I would, in a sense, start with the fact that a madhab is the easy way to go on this path that we're talking about. What path are we talking about? We're talking about the path of being born, living one's life, and eventually dying. And we have access to the best teacher ever, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So then how do we get our information from him? So then you have the whole question of what was it that the Prophet ﷺ did when he was with his companions. Sometimes he would do one thing, maybe for a different person he would do something slightly different. And then so we have a collective memory that builds up of many different, if you like, details within one very clear framework. And I would say that madhab is an easing of the path to follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then even if you take it down to, for example, specific examples, what is number one priority? Now we know again from the hadith, I can't give you the exact wording, but you will recognize the meaning, that the first thing that anybody is judged about is the prayer, doing the prayer.
Yes.
Now that,
Yawm al-Qiyamah, right?
And Yawm al-Qiyamah. So that already is something that you have to find out how to do. What happens, first of all, you have to learn how to do it. Okay, people teach you, you find out, you learn from seeing other people, you learn from other people say, no, don't do that, sit this way, do this, do that. And then you get situations that arise later in life, you become a leader in your house, the imam in your house or something, and you forget a rak'ah, or somebody else comes in late, or things happen. So you need to know how to respond to that. So what do? You can't just do it, you can't make it up by yourself. So you have to go to a source, which is going to be madhab. Okay. Sooner or later you're going to hit madhab.
Because it's been 1,400 years.
Yeah, They've done it before. It's all been done for us.
Okay.
So it's actually the easy path, not the difficult path. It's the easy path.
Okay.
And if you think about it as well, if you are tempted to reject madhab, what that ends up being is a statement, I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it straight up, it ends up being a statement of pride.
Yes.
Because it's like saying you're better than these people who made the path smooth for us.
Yes.
Who's going to say they know more than Imam Shafi'i?
Right.
Who's going to say they know more than Imam Abu Hanifa? Who's going to say they know more than Imam Malik? It doesn't make sense.
Right.
They knew far more than we could ever know. And what's more, they put it into practice. So they lived something, and the people around them learned it from them, and they experienced the deen and passed it on as a whole. You were talking about the holistic
the nature of this deen
aspect earlier on. And to be quite honest, that's it. How can any one of us now have that broad vision of what the whole picture is unless we rely on the people who went before us? It's almost like a self-evident truth.
Exactly. I mean, this was an issue that was never spoken about before. It's become a modern issue, really. Yeah. But the reason why I think it's become an issue is because when people go into a masjid, they see some people praying with their hands like this, some people with that. Why are there differences?
That again is a wonderful topic and full of interest and basically appreciation of the people who went before. And you find that there is a very broad agreement on many things. I would say something like 98% of the deen, and the difference between the fuqaha is like that little small 2% on the edge. So these things about what's the best way of doing the prayer? Do you clasp your hands like that, or do you have them by the sides? They're all they're actually very interesting, because they end up being, how far does one take a text, or how far does one take a lived experience as one's imam, as one's leader? And they're fascinating, but they're within a certain context already. That's not everybody's going to be talking about that or considering that important. It's going to be in other words, there's a zone for specialist differences, but if you get into that zone, it's extremely interesting, and it's always based on adab. It's always based on saying that I think what I have is best, but I accept that the other person has a basis as well.
Exactly.
So the whole thing about madhab is not about denying, it's not about rejecting someone else. It's just saying, look, we're going to have to do it one way or another. We've heard of these 2 or 3 different possibilities, and because of my teacher, I will prefer this way. Nearly always it comes down to people with other people.
Exactly.
So it's not a personal decision. If it's a personal decision, you might as well chuck the thing out, because the chances of going wrong are extremely high, which is what we see, of course. Everyone becomes a mufti.
Exactly.
They pick up a translation of Imam al-Bukhari, flick through the pages, that hadith is quite suitable, bam, give you a fatwa, with no idea of the context and no idea of what they're really talking about.
This was even early on. One of the students of Malik, or contemporaries of Imam Malik, as we know, there are 4 madhahib currently: Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Abu Hanifa, and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. One of the students of Imam Malik ibn Wahbin, he said, أكثرت من الحديث حتى تخيرت فلولا مالك والليث لهلكت. And that was early on. That wasn't the 21st century. Even then he couldn't understand that. But now one of the things that I've noticed, when you're making salah in jama'ah, and it's white next to black, alhamdulillah, spirituality that's there. But when someone says, brother, your foot needs to be next to mine, or they pull you towards you, you feel that, where's the spirit behind that? Adab al-ikhtilaf.
People have picked out one particular hadith about keeping the gaps, filling up the gaps between people. But if you look at the people who've transmitted this deen to us, you find that the Malikis don't expect feet to feet, the Shafi'is don't expect feet to feet, the Hanafis don't expect feet. Basically nobody ever did it until somebody comes up with this unusual hadith.
Why don't they? The hadith is there. Why do they not use that hadith as a primary
because there's many other hadiths, and there's the lived practice, and the lived practice goes beyond just the Maliki madhab. The lived practice goes across the deen, across all the madhab. And the lived practice is that you just stand next. The best thing is shoulder to shoulder. I was once told about, I think it's a cloak, I think it's kept in Istanbul, Allahu A'lam, I may be wrong, where the shoulder is worn because of standing next to other people in the prayer.
Yeah.
Now that's the bunyan al-marsus, you know, that's the rows in ranks, you know, like the soldiers in ranks.
Okay.
And that's a different concept. And what I find is that people are, I won't stand up because we can't with the camera, but people will be pushing their foot to the side and getting really annoying.
Exactly.
So you think, wait a minute, my prayer is in the top part of my body, not the bottom part of my body. Do I want to look down to my feet all the time? I want to, you know, am I talking to Allah? Am I hitting the you know, trying to touch
really
the next person's feet?
Not where my feet is, where my heart is.
Yeah. And I once knew a Libyan man, and we were talking about these things, and he said, if anyone does that to me, I stamp on their foot. He says, it gets so annoying. You know? And I like the what's the word, the hamasa, you know, like I can't think of the right word in English, but the strong feeling yeah.
Yeah. We are speaking with Dr. Yaseen Dutton. Join us after the break as we continue with an understanding of fiqh within the modern world.